Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So this is a bit impromptu, but some pretty insane things have been happening on Star Wars social media, and it's something that's been bubbling beneath the surface for quite some time. But in light of some recent developments, there is a new context and framework for bringing it up today. Star Wars fans are increasingly turning against Dave Filoni, and I wanted to do some digging as to why. Is he just a convenient scapegoat, or is there something more substantial to this? Now, to be honest guys, anti-Dave Filoni sentiment is nothing new. In fact, fans of the expanded universe have been criticizing him for years. Long before Star Wars Rebels, long before the Mandoverse, long before Ahsoka. Criticisms of Dave's work really started with the 3D Clone Wars series. Fans of the 2D micro-series by Tartakovsky felt as though Dave Filoni was really throwing out some of the best story tropes and rewriting them for his own canon, with many contradictions and retcons. And I will go into more depth about this, the different subcategories of canon, the different views of canon, and how George Lucas himself perceived it. Because say what you will about the 3D Clone Wars series, George Lucas oversaw much of it, and was actively involved in many of those choices that fans blame Dave Filoni for. So before we really get into it, anytime this kind of topic comes up, I get people misconstruing what I'm commenting on as my own opinion sometimes. And even the other day, I was commenting on a criticism someone else made, and people were saying, well, why are you so negative now? If you're new to my channel, this might be the first time you're hearing me say this, but if you're an OG, then you already know. I'm a big Star Wars animation fan. For me, the Clone Wars Season 6 and Season 7 are such amazing stories. Same as Tales of the Jedi, and same as Star Wars Rebels. So I'm not coming in with an agenda that, everything Dave Filoni's ever done is terrible, and I don't like the animated shows. I do. I even love The Bad Batch. That being said, the recent criticisms levied towards Lucasfilm are definitely valid, where it concerns their management of what is considered canon. But let's get into the new controversy, the topic du jour. A couple of days ago, Tony Gilroy and a couple of Andor cast members gave a live stream interview with the official Star Wars YouTube page. And one of the guests was the amazing Genevieve O'Reilly, Mon Mothma. She was asked a couple of questions and also reflected on her experience playing the character, and she finished it by saying, I will miss her, as in she will miss playing Mon. So I responded on Twitter, on x.com, that at least we're going to see her in Ahsoka Season 2 and other New Republic shows. Now when I said this, I kind of anticipated the kind of responses I was going to get, and I understand Genevieve can't confirm if she is going to be back, but she was talking as if this was a big farewell. And I understand what she meant. She has a more significant role than she does in Ahsoka. Andor gives her backstory, gives her complexity, and she's literally about to found the Rebel Alliance. So even if she's back in Ahsoka Season 2, it's just going to be a cameo role. But I was just reminding fans, we probably will see her again. And even though Dave Filoni wasn't mentioned, these remarks sparked an insane amount of backlash towards him, because the old conversation from a couple of years ago was back, how Tony Gilroy is a better writer than Dave, and how Tony can do more with Mon than Dave could ever dream. I definitely agree that Tony Gilroy is the better writer, but what I'm trying to say is, the fandom is in a very different position to where it was just a few years ago. The very same fans went from seeing Dave Filoni as a potential savior of Star Wars, the one who along with Jon Favreau is going to helm in a new era, the Mandoverse. That attitude was very prevalent after Mando Seasons 1 and 2. But ever since Book of Boba Fett the 3rd season, Ahsoka, even The Acolyte, when it came out that Dave Filoni had a big role in that, the fandom has turned, and there are more fans than ever before insisting Dave Filoni is not the person we thought he was going to be for Star Wars. We called him George Lucas's apprentice, the one person who understands Star Wars better than anyone else at Lucasfilm. But for so many fans who've lost faith in him, that ship has long sailed. Tales of the Jedi was a great success. The Clone Wars Season 7, Star Wars Rebels was great, but when it came to the jump from animation to live action, fans started comparing him to other showrunners and said, he's kind of overrated, he's definitely no Tony Gilroy. Take a look at some of these comments. Genevieve O'Reilly is crying because her character won't be any good after Andor is over. She's mourning the loss of her character because those other shows will desecrate her acting with their atrocious writing. Given the differences in how Dave Filoni writes her, it feels like she's almost a different character in Ahsoka. I wish Dave had learned something from Tony Gilroy. It just goes on and on like this, and I see the point. I get the crux of what they're trying to say. If you wanted to make a defense for Dave, you might argue, well, Mon Mothma's at a different position in her life, in Ahsoka, and we never really see her personal life, like we do in Andor, and the whole show's a different vibe. Dave Filoni's writing is more on the goofy side of the Star Wars universe, with a few exceptions where there has been emotional gravity if you think of Kanan's death, or some of the interactions Ahsoka has in her own show. Filoni writes Star Wars much less gritty than Tony Gilroy, but yes, I think Tony Gilroy's a better screenwriter, and Dave Filoni's better in animation. But this is where things get very interesting, because some fans have been criticizing Dave for decades. There's a famous interview with Sam Witwer, and he recalled a conversation that he had with Dave. And Dave said, canon doesn't really matter because all of these stories, they're just tall tales, they're just recollections. So if there are differences and contradictions, that is just one perspective. That is just the narrator's version of events. But that didn't sit well with fans, because how can you have a cohesive, new canon if you're contradicting very important details in books, in comics, in shows? To Dave, it doesn't matter. And it almost gives him a free pass to do whatever he wants with stories and not have to care if it clashes with something else, which it has time and again. He doesn't see it as fixed, it's malleable, and as such, it's no surprise Season 7 of The Clone Wars, Tales of the Jedi, the canon comics, the Ahsoka novel, parts of The Bad Batch, contains so many canon contradictions. And I'm not talking about contradictions with the expanded universe, I'm talking about contradictions since the Disney acquisition, and since the announcement in 2014 that everything that comes after the relegation of the EU to Legends is one cohesive story, and it just hasn't been the case. And so I wanted to show you this. When George Lucas was running Lucasfilm, there was an understood hierarchy of Star Wars canon. So instead of Disney's idea that everything is either canon or its expanded universe, there was a hierarchy of importance, and I would argue Disney should bring this back. So at the very top is G canon, George Lucas canon. This is set in stone, Star Wars canon, cannot be removed, cannot be altered, these are gospel, and in George's case, that was episodes 1 to 6. When the special editions came out, those were also considered G canon. Then there was T canon, television canon. This included the Clone Wars movie and the Clone Wars TV show. And then there was continuity canon, and this included books, comics, and the 2D Clone Wars series. Even though before the 3D show came out, it was considered by some Lucasfilm employees full canon. And then there was S canon, which means secondary canon. Some of the original Marvel Star Wars comics fit into this. Then there was D canon, which was supposed to be for the cancelled Star Wars Detours cartoon. And then there was N canon, non-canon. A good example of N canon were the What If Star Wars Infinities comics. But under Disney, there is canon and then legends. And the problem with this is that when there are contradictions, be it in the High Republic, be it in the Ahsoka novel, which I like to bring up, we're still told all of those stories are still the same level of canon, and that creates confusion, and it also leads fans to not want to take some of those stories very seriously anymore. So when you take a look at what Dave Filoni said about Star Wars canon being flexible and anything you want it to be, you run into problems, because for those of us who took those stories seriously, who invested time and money in those stories, as a consumer, as a fan, we end up feeling disrespected and just kicked to the curb. And I just want to finish with this. Fans often ask, what was George Lucas's take? Just know this. The expanded universe was written at the time to be canon. That's what the authors were told. George Lucas's view is he could draw from those stories for the movies if he wanted. And remember, some of the Jedi from the prequel trilogy like Aayla Secura did originate in expanded universe comics. But for George, the heart of Star Wars, the only things that truly mattered, so to speak, were the 6 films, and then the Clone Wars movie, and the TV show. That for George was it. That was Star Wars. That was the heart of Star Wars. Nothing was above his saga. So under Disney, with all of the recent TV shows and all of the recent books, in 2014 they told us everything that's to come, the movies, whatever else they make, they hold the same importance as A New Hope or as any of the other movies. So when you have blatant contradictions, you can see why fans get frustrated. But that's not the only reason fans are upset at Dave Filoni. Like I said, it goes deeper. Writing quality, care about his own characters. When compared to something like Andor, fans feel as though there is a big disparity between Filoni's reputation, his accolades, the praise fans have given him, and recent output quality. And so fans have more doubts about his abilities than ever before, when you have someone like Tony Gilroy doing something as amazing as Andor.